Singapore Geothermal Energy Corporation. Malaysia arranges evacuation for citizens stranded in flood-hit India. Good afternoon and Salam Malaysia Madani. This is World Today. I'm Shuhaida Arifin. Malaysia and New Zealand will explore investment and cooperation opportunities in the fields of energy transition and climate change. Deputy Prime Minister Datuk Seri Fadilah Yusof said Malaysia and New Zealand have agreed to explore cooperation in the energy sector, particularly geothermal energy. Datuk Seri Fadilah met his counterpart, New Zealand's Minister of Climate Change and Minister for Energy, Simon Watts, in Busan, South Korea. They discussed bilateral cooperation between Malaysia and New Zealand. Datuk Seri Fadilah is currently on an official working visit until 29th August in conjunction with the 15th Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation APEC Energy Ministers Meeting EMM. Datuk Seri Fadilah also held meetings with Singapore's Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Trade and Industry Gan Xiao Huang. Discussions with Singapore focused on strengthening the ASEAN power grid with the expansion of connectivity networks in the ASEAN region. APEC EMM 15 is a ministerial level meeting under the APEC framework and a continuation of the previous session held in Lima, Peru last year. Among the main agendas of the meetings are discussions and policies and initiatives in the energy sector, as well as efforts to promote cooperation and investment among APEC economies. Malaysia is arranging the evacuation of its citizens stranded in northern India on the earliest available flights. This is due to floodings and landslides caused by continuous monsoon rains that have left dozens dead. In a statement, the Foreign Ministry said the High Commission in New Delhi is closely monitoring the situation following severe flooding and landslides in several northern states. They include Jammu and Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Punjab and Arunachal Pradesh. The High Commission has successfully established contact with the Malaysians and is making arrangements for the departure via the earliest available flights. The ministry also urged Malaysians who are currently in the affected areas to register their presence, follow the instructions of local authorities, and take necessary safety precautions. In view of the worsening conditions, all Malaysians are strongly advised to defer non-essential travel to the affected regions until further notice. In a related development, at least 36 people have been killed and over 20 injured after heavy rains triggered a landslide in Jammu and Kashmir. The police and other rescue teams are on the ground and trying to search for survivors. The Flood Control Department in the region declared flood risk for the Jhelum River in the Kashmir Valley and advised people to stay away from riverbanks and to move to safer areas. Many structures have also been damaged. Schools, workplaces, businesses were closed as heavy rainfall swept through streets, bringing life to a standstill. Authorities advised residents to stay indoors. Indian Railways cancelled 18 trains to and from Katra, Udhampur and Jammu railway stations as heavy rains wreaked havoc in Jammu region. Mobile and internet services were partially restored after intense rainfall caused a communication blackout. Restoration work is still in progress after optical fibers lines were damaged in multiple locations. Floods and landslides are common during the June-September monsoon season, but experts say climate change coupled with poorly planned development is increasing their frequency, severity and impact. Meanwhile, at least 12 people were killed in a building collapse in India's Maharashtra state. The incident occurred in the Virar area of Palghar district, approximately 70 km from the state of capital Mumbai. The Press Trust of India news agency reported that at least 6 bodies were recovered from the site, while 6 others died during the treatment at various hospitals. According to media reports, the 4-story Ramabai apartment building was constructed 14 years ago and declared unsafe earlier by the local municipal authority. Police have arrested the builder. Building collapses in India are not uncommon during the monsoon season, which typically runs from June to September. Thailand and Cambodia have agreed on 11 resolutions at the Extraordinary Regional Border Committee meeting in Sisaket, northeastern Thailand, to de-escalate tensions and safeguard peace along their shared border. The meeting is aimed at fostering discussions and increasing confidence to de-escalate tension and maintain peace along the border using all necessary mechanisms to resolve differences peacefully and avoid clashes in the spirit of good neighborliness, friendship and solidarity. Thailand and Cambodia reaffirmed their unwavering commitment to implementing the decisions made at the special meeting on 28th July and the Extraordinary General Border Committee meeting on 7th August. Both sides agreed to maintain regular communication between border units to resolve issues peacefully and avoid clashes, stressing the need to intensify dialogue to build trust and promote good neighborliness. All United Nations Security Council members, except the US, said the famine in Gaza is a man-made crisis and warned that the use of starvation as a weapon of war is banned under the international humanitarian law. In a joint statement, the 14 Council members called for an immediate, unconditional and permanent ceasefire, the release of all hostages, a substantive surge of aid throughout Gaza, and for Israel to immediately and unconditionally lift all restrictions on aid delivery.
Dramatique. La famine sévit dans le gouvernorat de Gaza, comme l'ont confirmé les Nations Unies le 22 août dernier. L'utilisation de la famine comme arme de guerre est susceptible de constituer un crime de guerre. En début de semaine, des images effroyables nous sont parvenues de nouvelles frappes israéliennes sur l'hôpital de Khan Younes ayant causé la mort de nombreux civils, dont des journalistes. C'est intolérable.
Previously, a global hunger monitor determined that Gaza City and surrounding areas are officially suffering from famine and it will likely spread. The Integrated Food Security Phase Classification System said 414,000 people, nearly a quarter of Palestinians in Gaza, are experiencing famine, and that is due to the rise of 641,000 by the end of September. On a related note, the Israeli military pressed operations around Gaza City as US President Donald Trump hosted a meeting on post-war plans for the shattered Palestinian territory. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair reportedly attended the meeting at the White House to discuss plans for post-war Gaza. However, no details emerged from the gatherings, which Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, had earlier promised would be a large meeting. Earlier, Israel is under mounting pressure both at home and abroad to end its almost 2-year campaign in Gaza, where the United Nations has declared a famine. Mediators have circulated a truce proposal, which has been accepted by Palestinian group Hamas, but Israel has yet to give an official response. On the ground, Gaza's civil defense agency said Israeli strikes and gunfire killed at least 38 people yesterday, including 16 in Gaza City. The Israeli military, which is preparing to conquer Gaza City, said troops were operating on the outskirts of the territory's largest city. In Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood, residents reported heavy Israeli bombardment overnight. So far, Israel's military campaign in Gaza has killed at least 62,895 Elsewhere, journalists in the UK rallied in central London in solidarity with colleagues in Gaza in the wake of the 2 Israeli military strikes earlier this week that killed 5 journalists. Members of Britain's National Union of Journalists gathered outside the Downing Street office and residence of Prime Minister Keir Starmer, delivering a letter demanding accountability and step-up UK action to protect media workers. Attendees then held a vigil, reading aloud the names of more than 200 journalists that press watchdogs have counted as killed in Gaza since October 2023. Monday strikes in southern Gaza's Khan Yunis killed at least 20 people, including the 5 reporters who work for Al Jazeera, the Associated Press and Reuters, among other outlets. It is the latest military action by Israel that has killed journalists, leading to accusations that they are being deliberately targeted. The UK government has in recent months suspended arms export licenses to Israel for use in Gaza, suspended free trade talks with Israel, and sanctioned 2 far-right Israeli ministers in protest at Israel's conduct of the war. Last week, it was one of 27 countries to call on Israel to allow immediate independent foreign media access into Gaza. Israeli ground troops raided a Syrian site it had already bombed yesterday and a day prior. According to Damascus Foreign Ministry, Israel had struck the site near Kisweh outside Damascus on Tuesday, killing 6 Syrian soldiers, and bombed it again yesterday. A Defense Ministry official said the site was a former Syrian military base in Talmaneh near Kisweh. According to a government source, soldiers had found surveillance and eavesdropping devices in the area before it was hit by Israeli strikes on Tuesday. Following the second attack yesterday, Israeli troops were flown into the area to carry out a raid, with the details of which are not yet known, amid continued intensive reconnaissance flights. The Britain-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights noted that the Israeli ground raid was the first of its kind since the fall of the former Syrian ruler, Bashar al-Assad, in an opposition forces offensive in December. Israel has carried out hundreds of strikes in Syria since Assad fell and occupied much of a UN-patrolled demilitarized zone on the Syrian-held side of the armistice line between Syria and Israel. The U.S. President's Special Envoy Steve Witkoff said that he will meet with the Ukrainian representatives in New York later this week as diplomatic efforts continue to end the Ukraine conflict. According to Witkoff, Ukraine is considering Russia's peace proposal, while Moscow has expressed a desire to resolve the conflict. He noted that the Ukrainian conflict is more complicated than territorial disputes alone, and final decisions will be made in the Ukrainian capital Kiev instead of Washington. Speaking during his nightly address, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Presidential Office Chief of Staff and Defense Council Secretary will head to New York on Friday to meet with representatives of the U.S. President. The Ukrainian government delegation has been touring West Asia and Europe, visiting Qatar on Tuesday and Saudi Arabia on Wednesday before heading to Switzerland on Thursday. Still ahead, a shooter kills 2 children in Minneapolis church. And his 2 children were killed and 17 other people were injured at a Minneapolis Catholic school when a shooter dressed in black opened fire on students attending Mass on the 3rd day of the school. Minneapolis police chief said the assailant fired through the windows at students sitting in pews and entering the church and then killed himself. 2 students were pronounced dead at the scene. The attacker appeared to have acted alone, and the motive for the crime remains unknown.
The coward that shot these victims took his own life in the rear of the church. That coward has been identified as 23-year-old Robin Westman. No prior criminal history. There was a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. All 3 had been lawfully purchased by the shooter.
Court records showed that Westman's name was changed from Robert in 2020 on the grounds that Westman identified as female. The shooting at Annunciation Catholic School, a private elementary school with about 395 students, was the 146th such incident in the country since January. The steady drumbeat of shootings has prompted new safety measures and provided grist for ongoing debates about gun laws. White House flags were lowered to half-staff after U.S. President Donald Trump issued a proclamation to honor the victims of the shooting. Meanwhile, Washington has seen a sharp reduction in violent crimes following the recent federal surge, including an 87% drop in carjackings over the past 20 days. Washington Mayor Muriel Bowser voiced his support for Trump's $2 billion request to improve federal infrastructure in the district. Bowser also stressed the need for the federal resources to focus on violent crimes and community support.
I want to say that I have been personally engaged with Attorney General Bondi and the President's Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, and I spoke with the President this afternoon. And I was reminded of our first meeting after his re-election, where we discussed shared priorities for the district. There, I was reminded that the President's interest in cities predates his time in office, and his knowledge of D.C. had significantly increased from the first time he was in the White House.
Both federal and city crime statistics show that violent crimes have declined precipitously since a spike in 2023, but Washington remains among the country's most violent places. U.S. tariffs of 50% took effect on many Indian products, doubling an existing duty as President Donald Trump sought to punish New Delhi for buying Russian oil. India has criticized the levies as unfair and unreasonable, with its export body calling for government intervention to assuage fears of heavy job cuts. Trump has raised pressure on India over the energy transactions, a key source of revenue for Moscow's war in Ukraine, as part of a campaign to end the conflict. The latest salvo strains U.S.-India ties, giving New Delhi fresh incentive to improve relations with Beijing. The U.S. was India's top export destination last year, with shipments worth $87.3 billion. However, analysts have cautioned that a 50% duty is akin to a trade embargo and is likely to harm smaller firms. Exporters of textiles, seafood, and jewelry were already reporting cancelled U.S. orders and losses to rivals such as Bangladesh and Vietnam, raising fears of heavy job cuts. The Foreign Ministry previously said India had begun importing oil from Russia as traditional supplies were diverted to Europe over Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Mexico's Senate erupted into violence with punches, pushing and shouting after an opposition party leader grabbed the chamber's president as the session was wrapping up. Head of the opposition Institutional Revolutionary Party came at Senate President Gerardo Fernandez Noroña of the ruling Morena Party as lawmakers were singing the national anthem to mark the end of the day's hearing. The fight broke out after a difficult debate about the presence of armed forces from other countries in Mexico. In a video from the Mexican Congress, the head of opposition could be seen coming up to Fernandez Noroña and grabbing him by the arm. Finally, the two begin to push each other. Fernandez Noroña said he will call an emergency session for Friday and will propose expelling head of the opposition and 3 other Institutional Revolutionary Party lawmakers for the fight. in sports, the 7 national pairs advance at BWF World Championships. We begin our sports segment with smashing news in badminton. The country's top women's doubles pair, Pearly Tan and Tina, had no trouble securing a spot in the third round of the 2025 BWF World Championships after easily overcoming a Hong Kong pair in Paris, France. In the second round match at the Adidas Arena, the world number 2 pair needed only 37 minutes to seal a 21-17, 21-14 victory over Lui Lok Lok and Tai Hui Yang. Awaiting Pearly Tina in the next round is Indonesia duo Leni Tria Mayasari and Siti Fadia Silva Ramadanti. Meanwhile, national men's doubles pair Wan Arif Wan Junaidi and Yap Roy King also easily defeated Thai representatives Kitin Nupong Kadran and Dechapo Pawara Nukroh 21-13, 21-17 to advance to the third round. In the next round tonight, Wan Arif Roy King will face former world champion Aaron Chiaso Wuyik for an all-Malaysian affair. Aaron Wuyik defeated Scottish pair Christopher Grimley and Matthew Grimley 21-15, 21-16. Also advancing were mixed doubles pair Hong Pang-ron and Cheng Su-yin, who overcame Malik Borakkadi and Leona Mikhalski of Germany 21-10, 18-21, 21-12, and Go Sung-hwa Siobhan Lai Jamie, who defeated Thailand's Pakapon Terata Sakul and Pataimas Muen Wong 21-19, 21-15. However, Pang-ron, Su-yin, and Sun-hwa Siobhan Lai will face each other in the third round. Another mixed doubles pair, Chen Tangji Teo Yi Wei, also began their World Championship campaign in commanding fashion with a straight games win in Paris. The world number 4 brushed aside India's world number 33, Rohan Kapoor, and Rutvika Shivani Gade, 21-16, 21-11 in their first meeting at the Adidas Arena. Their next assignment, however, will be a far sterner test against Indonesia world number 11, Jafar Hidayatullah and Farisha Pasaribu, who have been in strong form this season. In another game, Goh Zifei and Nur Izzuddin Rumsani were made to sweat before securing their place in the men's doubles last 16. The world number 3 recovered from a game down to defeat gutsy Americans Chan Ti-yi and Presley Smith 19-21, 21-10, 21-17. They will face Lee Ji-hui and Yang Po-swan of Taiwan in the next round. Moving on to football, Manchester United plumbed new depths as fourth-tier Grimsby Town knocked them out of the League Cup 12-11 on penalties after a 2-2 draw at Blundell Park. Goals by Charles Vernam and former Manchester United youth player Tyrell Warren put the hosts in charge of the second round tie by half-time against the 6-time winners. But after thunder and lightning and a torrential rain squall, United finally came to their senses with Brian Mbeumo's first goal for his new club, offering them an escape route. Grimsby defended their lead valiantly, but Harry Maguire's 89th minute header sent the tie to penalties. A nerve-shredding shootout that lasted 18 minutes saw Matthew Cunha have his effort saved when he had the chance to seal it for United. The next 15 penalties were all scored before Mbeumo struck the crossbar to send the home fans into delirium. United manager Ruben Amorim watched the penalties hunkered down in the dugout, and the Portuguese coach who replaced Eric Ten Hag last season will now find himself under intense scrutiny after a horror show on the banks of the Humber River. Since being appointed, he has taken 28 points from his first 29 Premier League games and steered United to their worst seasons since 1974. New Liverpool forward Hugo Ekitike will not celebrate his first cap for France during next month's World Cup qualifiers after national team manager Didier Deschamps decided not to include him in the squad. The 23-year-old striker has made an excellent start in the Liverpool jersey with 3 goals in his first 3 matches following his summer transfer from Eintracht Frankfurt. Deschamps emphasized the depth of competition for attacking positions in the French side.
Hugo, de par ce qu'il a fait déjà la saison dernière, là vous le voyez peut-être un peu plus parce qu'il est à Liverpool, mais on le suivait aussi quand il était à Francfort où il a fait une très bonne saison. Après, tant mieux pour lui, le fait qu'il est à Liverpool et qui continue à avoir une bonne efficacité, c'est très bien. Après, c'est la concurrence au poste aussi. Je suis pas là pour les accumuler, mais évidemment qu'il a le potentiel pour être en équipe de France.
Deschamps has called up forwards Magnus Akilishi, Bradley Barcola, Ryan Cherki, Ousmane Dembele, Kylian Mbappe, Michael Olise and Marcus Thuram. France will face Ukraine in Wrocław in Poland on 5th September and Iceland on 9th September in Paris. Novak Djokovic overcame an early scare to reach the 3rd round of the US Open. Djokovic, who's chasing a record 25th Grand Slam singles titles, recovered from going a set down against American qualifier Zachary Svaya to complete a 6-7, 6-3, 6-3, 6-1 win on the Arthur Ashe Stadium court. The 38-year-old Serbian legend had not played since his semi-final exit at Wimbledon in July, before arriving in New York, skipping most of the North American hardcourt swing. Djokovic committed 14 unforced errors in a low-quality first set and then found himself 1-3 behind in the 3rd set. However, the 38-year-old managed to increase his intensity and benefited from a physical drop-off from Svajda, who was serving below 90 miles per hour on his first delivery throughout the 3rd and 4th sets due to a leg issue. Djokovic's victory sees him into the 3rd round at the US Open for a record-equaling 19th time, where he will face Britain's Cameron Norrie, who defeated Argentina's Francisco Camasana 7-6, 6-3, 6-7, 7-6. In another match, 4th seed Taylor Fritz also advanced safely, beating South Africa's Lloyd Harris 4-6, 7-6, 6-2, 6-4. Fritz took control of his encounter with Harris after crucially clinching the 2nd set tie break. Fritz fired 54 winners, including 17 aces, to improve to a 2-1 in his Lexus ATP head-to-head series with Harris. Both the Paris' previous tour-level meetings took place in 2020, and the 2025 incarnation of Fritz ultimately proved too strong for the South African qualifier. Fritz will take on another qualifier, Jerome Kim, in the 3rd round. And that wraps up World Today. In our top story, Malaysia and New Zealand to explore geothermal energy cooperation. Tune in to Malaysia Tonight coming up at 8:30 p.m. on TV1 and saluran berita RTM. Till then, I'm Shuhaida Arifin, Malaysia Madani, Rakyat Disantuni. Thank you for watching.